comment down below what country and/or city you're watching from. And if you hate crazy cars, I'd love to hear from y'all. Okay, buckle up, folks, because this one's a doozy. I'm about to tell you about the day. My neighbor, bless her, pea-sized heart, tried to weaponize the police against my kids for the crime of existing while black in their own damn pool. I'm still shaking my head thinking about it. But the karma, oh, the karma was sweeter than a slice of my grandma's sweet potato pie. Let's call my neighbor Agnes Periwinkle, because that just feels right for the level of ridiculousness we're dealing with here. I was inside trying to decipher the tax code, a task slightly less infuriating than listening to Agnes complain about the length of my grass, when I heard the unmistakable sound of sirens wailing in my normally quiet suburban paradise. I peered out the window, and my blood pressure instantly spiked. There was a police car parked halfway on my lawn, an officer friendly, or maybe not so friendly depending on how this played out. Was heading straight for my backyard. Now I'm a pretty chill dude. I work hard, I pay my taxes grudgingly, but I pay them, and I try to be a good member of the community. But I also know that being a black man in America means you got to be extra cautious, especially when the police are involved. My kids, Maya, 16, Jasmine, 14, and little Marcus, 10, were out back swimming, enjoying the summer heat. My mind raced had something happened. Were they okay? I hustled out the back door, ready to defend my family from whatever nonsense was brewing, and that's when I saw her. Agnes Periwinkle standing on the edge of my property, practically vibrating with self-righteous fury. She was pointing a manicured finger towards my pool, and I could hear her shrill voice even before I got close enough to make out individual words. This was going to be good, or, disastrously awful. Either way, I grabbed my phone, hit record, and braced myself. Here we go. I called about a public indecency. Agnes shrieked, her voice cracking like a poorly tuned violin officer. Miller, a young guy who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else, was trying to maintain a professional demeanor. But I could see the confusion etched on his face. "Ma'am, could you please explain the situation?" he asked, his voice calm and measured. Agnes puffed out her chest. These children are swimming in my pool, in a state of undress. It's a disgrace. I demand you arrest them immediately. I swear." You could have heard a pin drop, except for the splashing of my kids, who were now staring at us with a mixture of confusion and amusement. My daughters were in perfectly modest, one-piece swimsuits, and Marcus was rocking his Spider-Man trunks. Public indecency, seriously. I bit back a laugh. This woman was something else. Officer Miller looked from Agnes to my kids, then back to Agnes. He was clearly struggling to process the sheer absurdity of the situation. "Ma'am, are you sure this is your property?" he asked. His eyebrow raised so high it almost disappeared into his hairline. "Of course. I'm sure I've lived here for 30 years. Agnes huffed, crossing her arms. "This has always been my property. These people are trespassing." That's when I decided to step in. "Officer," I said, trying to keep my voice level. "I am David Johnson, and this is my property. I've lived here for 5 years, and I have all the paperwork to prove it." I pointed to my house, my manicured lawn, thanks to my weekly lawn service. Much to Agnes' chagrin and my very clearly well-maintained pool, these are my children, and they are doing absolutely nothing wrong. I could see a flicker of doubt in Officer Miller's eyes. He glanced at my house, then back at Agnes, whose face was slowly turning a shade of purple. I didn't think was humanly possible. The air crackled with tension, and I knew this was about to escalate. "He's lying. He's a renter." Agnes sputtered, grasping for straws. "He probably doesn't even have a lease." I chuckled. "Agnes, darling, I own this place outright. Mortgage paid, taxes current. I even got that hideous gnome off your lawn last Halloween when it blew into my yard. Remember, I can pull up the deed on my phone right now if you'd like." I pulled out my phone, casually scrolling through my photos, pretending to look for the deed. In reality, I was just making sure the video recording was still running. This was too good to miss Officer Miller. Bless his heart was starting to look a little exasperated. He clearly didn't sign up for this. When he joined the force, ma'am, he said, turning back to Agnes, I'm going to need to see some proof that this is your property. Do you have any documentation with you? Agnes' face crumpled. I left it at home, she mumbled, avoiding eye contact. And where is home? Ma'am, officer. Miller asked, his voice losing its friendly edge. Agnes pointed vaguely towards the street. Down there, a few houses down, so let me get this straight, Officer Miller said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. You called 911 to report a public indecency on property that you claim is yours, but you have no proof that it actually belongs to you, and the indecency you're referring to is 3 children swimming in broad daylight in appropriate swimwear. He paused, letting the absurdity of the situation sink in. Then he turned to me. Mr. Johnson, I apologize for the intrusion. It seems we've been misinformed. He gave Agnes a look that could curdle milk. No problem, officer, I said, trying to suppress a grin. Accidents happen, but the show wasn't over yet. Agnes wasn't about to let this go without a fight. But they're black. Agnes blurted out, her voice filled with a venom that made my stomach churn. They don't belong here. This is a respectable neighborhood. The air went still. My kids stopped splashing and stared at Agnes with wide, hurt eyes. Even Officer Miller looked shocked. Time seemed to slow to a crawl. I took a deep breath, trying to control the rage that was bubbling inside me. I knew I needed to remain calm for my kids' sake. Agnes, I said, my voice low and dangerous. You need to stop right now. This isn't going to end well for you. But Agnes was on a roll. She was clearly fueled by some potent cocktail of racism and delusion. I'm just saying what everyone else is thinking. She shrieked. They bring down the property values. They're there. I cut her off, officer. I said, turning to Officer Miller. I want to press charges. I believe this constitutes harassment and a hate crime. I have everything recorded. I held up my phone, making sure she saw the red recording light. The color drained from Agnes's face. She finally realized she had crossed a line, a very bright, very clearly marked line, officer. Miller nodded. Ma'am, he said, his voice firm. You are under arrest for filing a false police report, harassment, and inciting racial hatred. You have the right to remain silent. As Officer Miller recited her rights, Agnes started to sob. It was a pathetic, self-pitying sound, and I felt absolutely no sympathy for her. She had brought this on herself. He guided her towards the police car, and as he did, she turned to me, her face contorted with rage and regret. You haven't heard the last of this, David Johnson, she screamed. I just smiled and waved. I had a feeling the aftermath was a whirlwind. The news caught wind of the story, and suddenly, my quiet suburban life was anything but. Reporters were camped out on my lawn, much to the continued annoyance of Agnes, who was now out on bail and glaring at my house from behind her curtains. My phone was ringing off the hook with interview requests and messages of support. I did a few interviews mostly to highlight the insidious nature of racism and the importance of standing up against it. I made sure to emphasize that this wasn't just about one crazy lady. It was about a system that allowed people like Agnes to feel emboldened to weaponize the police against black people for simply existing. My kids, understandably, were shaken up by the whole experience. We had a lot of conversations about race prejudice and how to navigate a world that sometimes sees them as a threat. Simply because of the color of their skin, it was a tough conversation, but it was necessary. The outpouring of support from the community was overwhelming. Neighbors who had previously just nodded, politely in passing, were now bringing over casseroles and offering words of encouragement. Even the HOA president, a notoriously grumpy old man named Mr. Henderson, stopped by to apologize for not doing more to address Agnes' behavior in the past. But the best part, The absolute sweetest cherry on top of this whole ridiculous Sunday. Agnes' arrest triggered a clause in her HOA agreement that allowed the board to evict her. Apparently, this wasn't the first time she'd pulled some racist nonsense, and the HOA had finally had enough. So, yeah, Agnes Perwinkle is gone. Vanished. Poof. Her house is up for sale, and I've heard rumors that a lovely young couple, one of whom is black, is planning to buy it. The irony is so thick, you could cut it with a knife. My kids are doing better. They're still a little wary of strangers, but they're slowly starting to feel safe again. We've made it a point to spend even more time together, swimming in our pool, laughing and just enjoying each other's company. As for me, I'm feeling pretty good. I stood up for my family. I exposed a racist for who she was. And I got to witness a truly epic display of karma and action. It wasn't easy, and it was definitely stressful, but it was worth it. This whole experience has taught me a few things. First, always have your phone charged and ready to record. Second, never underestimate the power of a good lawyer. And third, never ever let anyone tell you that you don't belong. You belong wherever you damn well please. So the next time you're facing down a racist neighbor or dealing with some other form of injustice, remember my story.